April 18, 2026, and the Strait of Hormuz goes from absolute darkness to controlled chaos in the span of 3 seconds. The British-flagged oil tanker MV Crestline Valor, hauling 2.1 million barrels of Saudi crude through the narrowest shipping lane on Earth, a 21 nautical mile choke point that funnels a fifth of the world's oil supply through water you could cross in a jet ski, is running at a steady 12 knots when 3 Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps speedboats, Bagamar-class fast attack craft, materialize from the northern darkness without radio contact, without warning protocol, without anything resembling international maritime law. The lead boat opens fire. 2 warning shots from a 23mm ZSU cannon punch the sea surface in a wall of white spray less than 40 meters ahead of the tanker's bow. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Dwight the 500th, Eisenhower, patrolling 80 nautical miles southwest under total emissions control, meaning every radar, every transmitter, every electronic signature that could give away the carrier's position is shut down. The AN Spy-6 V1 air and missile defense radar array lights up. The AI-driven Aegis Baseline 10 combat system registers the acoustic signature of the cannon discharge, cross-references it against the IRGC naval patrol grid from the previous 72 hours, and flags the event as a deliberate hostile act, Level 2 maritime provocation. Every vertical launch cell on the strike group goes to standby. The watch officer looks at the screen and understands immediately that this is not a random escalation. This is the opening move of something that's been in motion for days. What Tehran doesn't know yet is that they've just woken up a system that has been watching them in complete silence, cataloging their movements, tracking their communications, and waiting for exactly this moment. Now here's where you need to zoom out. Because this tanker, this gunfire, this 3-boat intercept in the dark, none of it happens in a vacuum. Over the previous 36 hours, Iranian leadership made a decision that would define the next decade of global energy security. After briefly reopening the Strait of Hormuz in response to diplomatic pressure from Europe and the Gulf states, Tehran abruptly reversed course and announced a new blockade, this time targeting all vessels operating under American flags or American-sanctioned company banners. The stated justification was retaliation for the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports, but the real objective was far darker. Iran, backed by Russian electronic warfare assets and Chinese fuel resupply agreements, had decided to force a showdown. Either Washington blinked and lifted its port blockade, or the global oil supply chain seized up, triggering a financial earthquake that would make the 1973 oil embargo look like a momentary inconvenience. We're talking about 17 to 21 million barrels of crude oil passing through the strait every single day. If that flow stops, oil futures spike within hours, gasoline prices double within a week, and every nation dependent on Gulf energy, which is most of the developed world, starts making very uncomfortable phone calls. Iran understood this leverage. Russia understood this leverage. And they had spent the better part of 2 weeks preparing a technological trap designed to neutralize the one thing that makes American naval power untouchable: its information dominance. What the IRGC did not know, what Moscow had failed to warn them about, was that the USS Eisenhower carrier strike group had not retreated to the safety of the Arabian Sea. It had gone dark, completely dark, operating under a level of emissions control so strict that even Allied naval forces weren't sure where it was. At 0319 hours, 2 seconds after the gunshot data is parsed by the Aegis system, a P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operating at 32,000 feet and 200 miles north, callsign Raptor 7, receives an automated priority data burst via Link 16, the secure tactical data network that connects every American naval and air asset in the theater. Without breaking its emissions silence, Raptor 7 banks quietly eastward and activates its AN/APS 154 advanced airborne sensor in passive mode. The radar sweeps the surface below in synthetic aperture imaging mode, painting an invisible map of everything floating in a 150 nautical mile radius. What it finds makes the senior tactical officer on the P-8A lean forward and say quietly, "That's not a fishing fleet." Hidden among 34 Iranian-flagged fishing vessels clustered in a loose formation 12 nautical miles northeast of Bandar Abbas, a formation that commercial AIS systems, the automatic identification systems that track civilian maritime traffic, had been registering as routine overnight activity for 4 days, is a vessel unlike the others. The hull profile matches, the radar return cross-section matches, but the thermal signature is wrong. Deep in the engine room of what the AIS system identifies as the Mehraban 7, A civilian trawler registered in Bandar Abbas. A heat bloom approximately 400% larger than any trawler engine has any right to generate is glowing like a furnace on infrared. Raptor 7 tags the contact. The data is encoded and transmitted to the Eisenhower CIC in 0.18 seconds via Link 22. The Mehraban 7 is no fishing boat. American Signals Intelligence satellites operating in low polar orbit had been tracking a specific encrypted transmission fingerprint for 11 days, a wideband frequency hopping signal with a cycle period of 4.7 milliseconds, originating from somewhere in the southern Persian Gulf. The NSA's Silverfish Analytic Program, a classified signals processing platform that cross-references emission patterns against known military systems worldwide, had matched the signal against a database of known Russian military platforms and returned a 94.3% probability match. The Murmansk BN, Russia's most advanced ship-borne electronic warfare system, a platform capable of jamming entire GPS constellations across a 5,000-kilometer radius, paralyzing Link's 16 tactical data networks, and spoofing AIS positioning systems across a 200 nautical mile bubble. If the Murmansk BN went fully active, the USS Eisenhower's entire combat system would be deaf, blind, and mute simultaneously. No radar, no data link, no GPS, no communications. Russia and China were actively backing Iran's play, and Moscow had quietly handed Tehran a weapon that could neutralize America's greatest asset, not its missiles, not its aircraft, but its information dominance. At 0328 hours, Rear Admiral Travis Colburn aboard the Eisenhower issues a classified flash message to 5th Fleet Command in Bahrain. The Mehraban 7, suspected Russian EW asset operating under civilian cover, is inside the passive engagement boundary. The Admiral's recommendation is unambiguous. Prosecute before she goes active. He has at most 22 minutes because at 0350 hours, according to NSA pattern analysis, the Murmansk BN matches a historical activation window. The same time pattern had appeared in 3 prior deployments, the Baltic in 2023, the Black Sea in 2024, and the Red Sea in early 2025. Every time that pattern appeared, exactly 33 minutes later, the system went fully active. The Americans had studied this fingerprint long enough to know that 0350 hours was the point of no return. The countdown clock in the Eisenhower CIC is already running. At 0331 hours, 2 EA-18G Growlers, call signs Spectre 1 and Spectre 2, launch from the Eisenhower's electromagnetic catapults climbing to 28,000 feet without lighting their afterburners. They carry the newest AN/ALQ-249 next-generation jammer pods, and a classified system known only within the strike group as Codebreaker, a directed multi-band electromagnetic pulse weapon capable of frying the semiconductor architecture of a specific target system without damaging the vessel's structural integrity. It had been tested once in a classified range exercise off Kauai in November 2025. This would be its first operational deployment. Simultaneously, at depth, the Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine USS Missouri SSN 780 receives an ELF transmission encoded in 7 characters. It had been sitting 400 meters below the thermocline, 6 nautical miles southeast of the Mehraban 7's position, for the past 19 hours. The Missouri sonar operator had already cataloged the Mehraban 7's acoustic signature in full, the low-frequency hum of a diesel-electric backup generator running far above civilian trawler specification, the faint harmonic resonance of large antenna arrays operating on internal power, and at 0317 hours, a single metallic click that the passive broadband hydrophone array identified as the opening of a pressure-sealed equipment bay, the kind that housed weapon systems. The Mehraban 7 was arming. At 0338 hours, the Iranian gunboats harassing the MV Crestline Valor escalate. A second volley of 23mm fire, this time aimed directly at the tanker's bridge wing, punches 2 rounds through the glass. No casualties, but the psychological signal is unmistakable. Iran is prepared to physically seize the vessel if the U.S. carrier group attempts to intervene. The tanker's captain, a Norwegian national named Eriksson, immediately broadcasts a mayday on Channel 16. The distress call screams across the maritime spectrum and is picked up simultaneously by every naval vessel within 150 nautical miles. It is also picked up by the Mehraban 7, and that is the mistake Iran makes. The moment the Mehraban 7's communications officer activates the vessel's wideband receiver array to monitor the mayday traffic, The system generates an electromagnetic footprint 340 times larger than its passive emission baseline. Spectre 1, now orbiting silently at 28,000 feet, invisible on radar, detects the emission spike in real time. The targeting solution is computed and locked in 0.4 seconds by the Aegis Fire Control Network. The Maribon 7's exact position, heading, and speed are confirmed to within 3 meters. At 0341 hours, Admiral Colburn gives the order: execute codebreaker, non-lethal. Spectre 1 rolls wings level, aims its ANALQ-249 pod at the Maribon 7's emission source, and fires a precision electromagnetic pulse, a tightly focused beam of high-power microwave energy tuned to the exact resonant frequency of the Murmansk BN's cooling system control circuitry. The pulse lasts 0.8 seconds. On the Maribon 7, the effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. Not to the crew, not to the hull, but to the machine. Every processor board inside the Murmansk BN superheats and fails simultaneously. The cooling management system that kept the massive antenna array operational shorts out in a cascade of blown capacitors. The system's AI core, the brain of Russia's most sophisticated EW platform, wipes itself in a thermal protection shutdown. The massive antenna array, without active cooling, begins to physically degrade within 90 seconds. The Murmansk BN is dead. On the screens of Russian signals intelligence satellites monitoring the region from orbit, the Murmansk BN's emission signature simply vanishes mid-transmission at 0341 and 17 seconds. In Moscow, the duty officer at the GRU northern section stares at his screen for 4 seconds before quietly picking up a secure phone. Whatever he says to the officer on the other end has never been made public. At 0343 hours, the USS Missouri surfaces to periscope depth and broadcasts a direct sonar transmission to the Maribon 7, a military-grade underwater acoustic signal in the LF band decodable by any naval vessel. You have been identified, your cargo is known. Comply with instructions or face consequences. Aboard the Maribon 7, the captain, a Russian naval contractor named Volkov, traveling on an Iranian seaman's document, looks at the blank screens where his $1.2 billion electronic warfare system had been running 8 seconds ago. Then he looks at his Iranian liaison officer. Neither man speaks. At 0345 hours, the Iranian gunboats harassing the crestline Valor abruptly disengage. No radio communication. They simply turn north and accelerate toward Bandar Abbas at maximum speed. The signal has been received. By 0350 hours, the exact activation window the NSA had predicted, the Maribon 7 has dropped anchor, turned off every non-navigation system, and broadcast a civilian distress signal claiming engine failure. The crew of 23, 9 of whom are Russian defense contractors, sits in silence in the mess compartment under the watchful thermal optics of Raptor 7 circling overhead. At 0412 hours, the USS Eisenhower passes within 28 nautical miles of the Maribon 7's position, carrier air wing fully cycled and ready. 5,000 sailors at modified general quarters. 2 F/A-18F Super Hornets fly a single low pass over the vessel at 1,200 feet. Not as an attack, but as a receipt. A message delivered in jet wake and noise that needs no translation. We see you. We have always seen you. And you never had a chance. By 0430 hours, the crestline Valor has resumed course, escorted by 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers through the strait. The U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet issues a public statement noting that routine freedom of navigation operations have been conducted in the Strait of Hormuz. No mention of the Maribon 7, no mention of Codebreaker, no mention of the Missouri. Moscow issues no statement. Iran's foreign ministry announces that the Strait of Hormuz situation is under review, and that commercial shipping will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis going forward. The Russian electronic warfare asset sits disabled in the southern Persian Gulf. The 9 contractors aboard have no way to explain their presence on an Iranian-registered fishing vessel to anyone, least of all to their own government. By 0600 hours, a fast patrol craft from the IRGCN arrives to take the Maribon 7 under tow, back toward Bandar Abbas and out of international scrutiny. But the Americans have what they came for. Raptor 7's passive sensors spent 41 minutes recording every emission the Murmansk BN generated before Codebreaker killed it. The signal profile, modulation architecture, frequency hopping algorithms, and antenna gain patterns of Russia's most secret EW system are now locked inside a classified NSA server farm in Maryland. Every future deployment of the Murmansk BN on any vessel in any ocean is now readable, predictable, neutralizable. Russia handed America the skeleton key to its own most guarded technological secret. The Strait of Hormuz did not become a graveyard for an American carrier. It became a graveyard for Russian electronic dominance. And Tehran, the willing host of Moscow's trap, is left with a disabled trawler, 9 contractors who can't exist officially, and a strategic humiliation they can never announce publicly. The oil keeps flowing. But somewhere in the Kremlin's intelligence directorate, a door is quietly closed. A file is stamped compromised, and the hard question is already being asked. How did they know exactly where to look? The answer, of course, is the one Russia always forgets. The Americans have been listening since before the ship left port, and in this era of multi-domain warfare, where a 0.8-second microwave pulse fired from an aircraft you never detected can kill a billion-dollar electronic system without leaving a single scratch on the hull, the age of deniable proxy warfare has a new and terrifying limitation. America doesn't need to sink your ship to defeat you. It only needs to blind it. And they can do that from an orbit you'll never reach. Could Iran and Russia rebuild this capability before the next confrontation at the Strait? And if a second Murmansk BN is already at sea right now, what would stop the US from doing this again? Drop your analysis in the comments. If you want to stay ahead of every classified development in this conflict, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next file is already open.